Buenos dias, internet bikers. Today, we're going to do a detailed review of the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. This bike right here, right? And I have a couple bikes out here. We're going to talk about the relationship that they have with the Super Meteor soon enough. But first off, let's start by saying that there are three variants of the Super Meteor 650, and this is the higher spec one. The base model is what they call the Astral, which is just a monotone paint job with no accessories on it. And then second model or the next level up is the Interstellar, which is the same thing but just bi-tone, right? It's a dual color painting. That's the only difference really. Then there's this one, which is the Celestial model. This is the higher spec one because it actually has three accessories aside from the let's say exclusive paint job that the other ones don't have, and which are the windscreen, the touring seat, and the passenger backrest. That's what makes this a Celestial, right? When it comes to the design of the bike, I think it's pretty cool. It's one of the best looking bikes out there in this market, in the segment, in the mid-range cruiser market. I think that the quality, like the step up in quality that Royal Enfield has done with this bike compared to some of its previous models is very noticeable, and it is very surprising in a very good way, right? I'm talking about this bike right here. This is the Hunter 350. It's a cool bike. It's a very budget bike, and it really serves the purpose. But you can clearly tell the step up in quality, and of course it makes sense because this one is almost twice the power, or more than twice the power, but more than that, almost twice the price, right? So that's important to note. But when we're going into the design aspects of it, the other reason that I have these two bikes out here is because this is not your typical cruiser. That's your typical cruiser, right? This is my Yamaha V-Star 950. It's one of the staples of the cruiser market for, I guess, a couple decades now. And the seat height is noticeably lower than it is on this one. And I'm going to put up a little video in which I'm going to show the difference in, you should be seeing right now, the difference in how when you stop in this cruiser, in the typical Japanese cruiser, or relatively normal cruiser style, you can see how easy it is to plant both feet down when you stop. Whereas when you look at the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650, the seat height is much higher, and that means that it almost feels like a naked or standard bike when you're doing a full stop and you have to maneuver the bike around. So that's important to note, right? It's not a bad thing, not a good thing. It just means that the bike feels a little bit different. That's why I have the other bike out here, because it feels kind of more like a Neo Retro disguised as a cruiser. But all the internals, all the dimensions, all the what makes the bike what it is are more like a Neo Retro, in my opinion, right? Everyone is free to have their own opinions. For me, this is a Neo Retro disguised as a cruiser. But it's a pretty good disguise. I mean, it looks awesome. Okay, and one more thing that I wanted to say about the design of this bike and the quality upgrade, let's say, is the rear view mirrors. I've criticized the 350 mostly due to the rear view mirrors, right? I thought that the mirrors were pointless when you were doing over 50 miles an hour or 80 or 90 kilometers per hour for those of us in Europe or elsewhere, because it was just pointless to use the mirrors. You couldn't make anything out of the image when you were going at higher speeds. However, in this one, I can be doing 80 on the highway or 130 kilometers per hour, and they're very stable. They don't jump around like on that bike. It's amazing. I mean, it's not picture perfect, of course, because it's a bike and you're running, and it's making a lot of vibrations and stuff like that. but it is still very usable. Those are very usable mirrors even at high speeds. So that's really cool. I wasn't expecting it, and so that's a good thing. I want to give props to Royal Enfield for that one. I wasn't expecting it, basically. And the other thing that I really like about this bike, when it comes to the looks, are the silencers, right? The exhausts. I really love this style of one exhaust coming this way and the other exhaust coming the other way. Like the symmetry of it. I love the symmetry in motorcycles. So I like that about this bike. That's pretty cool. I know that this is kind of like a British thing. I know the Triumphs and the other Royal Enfields that have twin cylinders have this setup. I think it looks great. So when it comes to the performance of the motorcycle, this is 47 horsepower. This is meant to be for the A2 license in Europe. It's something that many people fret about, whether that is enough power or not for riding long distance and riding 2-up. I can categorically say, yes, it is. Because I just did 400 kilometers on it, 2-up. We were riding both bikes. I had some friends riding this one. We were riding this one. Me and my wife were on this one, testing it out, of course. And we did the whole day on the motorcycle, no issues whatsoever. We were passing trucks on the highway. We were ripping it in the curves, like, you know, like we were having the time of our lives. I mean, I was having an amazing time. It is more than enough power to handle yourself elegantly within the speed limits and even slightly above them. But at the same time, this bike is not your typical cruiser, and you can tell, not just because of the seat height, but because of the shorter wheelbase. So what this setup means is that this bike dynamically is so much more nimble than your typical cruiser. When you're going through some twisties on a typical cruiser, it's a lot of work, right? You need to muscle the bike into the curves. You need to think about it, and you need to take it a little bit slower than you would on a standard bike, meaning that you take more time and you need a lot more effort. Whereas on this bike, it feels like a standard bike on the curves, so it is quicker, it is easier to point, and it is a lot more stable. And what that means is that it's more effortless. So it is a lot more enjoyable when you're doing twisty roads. Even if you're doing 2-up, even if you're carrying a load, it just feels a lot better than any cruiser of that you know, typical format. So that is pretty cool, and I was enjoying it so much. You can see it on the videos that I'm posting right now, that yeah, I was just ripping it through the curves and I was having the time of my life. It was really cool. I've been saying a lot of good things about this bike, and it's time to hit the bad, right? Because no bike is perfect. So aside from the seat height, which may or may not be a bad feature, depends on the person, so I don't consider it a negative, it's just a characteristic. One of the things that this bike has that I don't like is the turning angles, right? It's like, this is it. Maybe the camera won't show it so well, but it doesn't feel like it can turn too much. When I've tried it in enclosed areas, and when I've had to maneuver the bike, yeah, it's not the best turning angle, so it's a little bit more difficult to move around. That's one thing. The other thing is the touring seat. I don't know what is it with touring seats lately, but my opinion is that they're too hard. This one is pretty hard, and yeah, it cost us. By the end of the day, we were suffering. So, but at the same time, I think that I've seen this in other brands, that the touring seats are apparently better, but not really. So what I'm thinking is, if I was gonna get this bike, I would get it. I would get one of either the Astral or the Interstellar, and I would purchase the windshield from Royal Enfield because it's pretty cool. But I would get the seat and the backrest from the aftermarket, as we usually do with our typical cruisers. Now, having said that, would I buy this bike? And I'm not 100% sure, because one of the things that I realized is that when I was riding it, I was feeling like I was on an interceptor. I felt like this is probably what an interceptor feels like, except that I have foot forward position. So I don't know if I prefer the foot forward position on such a high seat. And I think I'm gonna have to try the interceptor once more. I tried it a couple years ago, but that was a very short test ride. So I'm gonna try the interceptor, give it a little bit more of a test, and see if I prefer this bike or if I prefer the interceptor with more standard foot controls. So I don't know. I guess I'll see what my opinion is after I test that one, because yeah, this is a really interesting motorcycle, but it's too, in my opinion, it's a little bit too high to have forward controls. So yeah, I think that there's something missing there for me. So maybe the Interceptor is the bike for me if I were looking for something in this range. I'll hopefully test the Interceptor sometime soon, and I'll give you all a heads up about it and further opinions on the subject. I guess that's it for now, so don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, you know, all the good stuff, and hasta luego.